Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am Sarah and I'll be guiding you through today's story. What you are about to hear is human science fiction crafted with imagination and voiced by real human narrator. So settle in, take a breath and let's step into the future together. Professor Marcus Thornwick had seen a lot of ridiculous things in his 30 years as a xenobiologist. He had watched a Glorbian try to eat a chair. He had seen a Tenthari accidentally tie itself into a knot during a presentation on flexibility. He had even witnessed the infamous incident at Proxima Station, where someone discovered that Fluvian diplomats were, in fact, violently allergic to chocolate and yet had been too polite to mention it for three entire conferences. But this, this took the cake. The grand auditorium of Station Kepler 7 was packed with representatives from 417 different species, all crammed into a space that smelled like a zoo had been crossed with a chemical plant. The air filtration system was working overtime, creating a faint hum that did nothing to mask the sound of several thousand beings trying not to breathe too loudly in each other's direction. At the front of the auditorium, a massive holographic display flickered to life, showing what was apparently the result of 15 years of research, 3 billion credits in funding, and the combined efforts of the galaxy's finest biological minds. The Galactic Apex Species Rankings. Thornwick adjusted his glasses and leaned forward, genuinely curious despite himself. The rankings were based on survival adaptability, predatory efficiency, biological resilience, and something the researchers called dominance sustainability, which Thornwick suspected was just a fancy way of saying how hard would this species be to kill if you really needed to. The list populated from bottom to top, accompanied by triumphant music that would have been more appropriate for a sports championship. Number 10, the Scarlet Swarm. Number 9, the Thermic Ravagers. Number 8, the Void Stalkers. Thornwick scrolled through his datapad, looking for humanity's placement. Nothing. He scrolled again. Still nothing. A slow, deeply unprofessional grin spread across his face. Humanity had not made the top 10. Humanity had not even made the top 20, according to the full dataset he pulled up. Homo sapiens, the species that had gone from wooden spears to antimatter weapons in roughly 10,000 years, the species that had looked at the vast emptiness of space and declared it real estate, had been deemed insufficiently apex for the galaxy's biology textbooks. Oh, this was going to be fun. Thornwick settled back in his seat, crossed his arms, and prepared to enjoy the show. Around him, various species representatives were preening, chittering, or in one case secreting what he hoped was a substance of joy. Nobody seemed to notice the lone human in the back row who was currently having the time of his life watching the galaxy's scientific community make what would soon be a very, very awkward mistake. The music swelled. The number one position appeared on the screen in letters 3 meters tall. The Crethians. The applause was deafening. The Crethian representative rose to accept what was apparently a physical trophy, which seemed unnecessary for a scientific conference, but here they were. Commander Vex stood on 8 segmented legs, each ending in claws that could punch through standard hull plating, his chitin armor gleaming under the auditorium lights like polished obsidian. His mandibles clicked together in what Thornwick had learned was the Crethian equivalent of a smug smile. On behalf of my species, Vex announced, his voice amplified through the station's translation system, I accept this recognition of what we have always known. The Crethians are the ultimate apex predator. We have ruled our homeworld for 60 million years. We can spit acid that melts durasteel. Our exoskeleton can withstand direct kinetic strikes. We are Simply put, biologically perfect. The applause continued. Thornwick checked his messages. The number two species, the Vaughan Collective, didn't so much walk to the stage as flow. They were a hive mind, thousands of individual beetle like creatures that formed into a vaguely humanoid shape when they needed to interact with boring single consciousness species. Their representative spoke in perfect unison, which was deeply unsettling. We are legion. We are inevitable. We have conquered 12 star systems through pure biological superiority. Plasma fire does not harm us, vacuum does not kill us. We simply adapt and continue. This ranking is merely confirmation of observable reality. Thornwick wondered if it would be rude to start eating the sandwich he had packed. Probably yes. He ate it anyway. The next eight species paraded across the stage in descending order, each more self congratulatory than the last. The thermic ravagers could survive in the heart of a star. The void stalkers could hibernate for centuries and wake up ready to hunt. The glacial apex could regenerate from a single cell. The razorwings had neurotoxin in literally every part of their body, including, bafflingly, their tears. It was around species number 6 when Thornwick noticed someone sliding into the seat next to him. He glanced over and immediately recognized the uniform: Human Colonial Fleet, Captain's rank, Special Operations insignia. Captain Diana Reeves nodded at him, glanced at the stage where a particularly gelatinous species was explaining its ability to dissolve prey from the inside out, and then looked down at her own datapad. Her eyebrows rose slowly as she read through the rankings. Her shoulders started shaking. Don't, Thornwick whispered. Do not laugh. We're observing. We didn't make the list. Reeves whispered back, her voice strangled with suppressed amusement. I know. We didn't even make the top 50. I know. Marcus, we have orbital weapons platforms that could sterilize half these species' homeworlds before breakfast. I'm aware, Diana. I'm very aware. Reeves pressed her lips together, her face turning red. A small, extremely undignified snort escaped. Several nearby aliens turned to look at them. Thornwick smiled apologetically and gestured at his datapad as if he had just shown Reeves a particularly funny research paper and not the galaxy's most comprehensive self-own. On stage, species number 3 was wrapping up their acceptance speech. Thornwick had lost track of what made them special. Something about electromagnetic pulse generation and hunting in packs of thousands. This is the best day of my life, Reeves whispered. Please behave. I'm a decorated military officer. I'm always behaving. The glint in her eye suggested this was a lie. The applause was finally dying down when a small, tentative voice spoke up from the middle section of the auditorium. Excuse me, I have a question. Every sensory organ in the room turned toward the source. A diminutive creature, barely a meter tall, with pale blue skin that glistened with moisture and eye stalks that drooped apologetically, rose from their seat. Thornwick recognized the species. Pip was a quintari, a mollusk-derived species known primarily for being anxious and asking uncomfortable questions at academic gatherings. Yes? Commander Vex's mandibles clicked with barely concealed irritation. I was just wondering, where did the humans rank? I don't see them on the list, but they seem to be, everywhere. Pip's eye stalks curled inward, as if trying to hide from the attention. I mean, no offense intended. I'm just curious for the data completeness. The room fell silent in that specific way that meant everyone had been thinking the same thing, but nobody wanted to be the one to ask. Commander Vex's chitin plates shifted in what Thornwick had learned was the Crethian equivalent of a dismissive shrug. The humans were evaluated naturally. They did not qualify for the rankings due to several significant biological deficiencies, such as Pip asked, still standing, eye stalks now extended with genuine scientific curiosity. Vex clicked through his datapad with one claw. Lack of natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no acid, no natural armor. Fragile skeletal structure. Relatively slow movement speed. Excessive resource requirements for basic survival. Poor environmental adaptation range. And, if we're being completely honest, highly questionable decision making patterns that seem to prioritize entertainment value over survival efficiency. Several species made sounds of agreement. Someone in the back chittered loudly. Thornwick felt Reeves stiffen beside him. He put a warning hand on her arm. Observation mode, he whispered. He just called us fragile, she whispered back. Technically true, we don't have exoskeletons. I once watched a Marine survive a fall from orbit using only a malfunctioning graph chute and spite. Still observing, Diana. Pip's eye stalks swiveled uncertainly. But, forgive me, Commander Wex. The humans have colonized 147 different worlds across 72 star systems. That seems like quite a lot for a species with poor environmental adaptation. Vex waved a claw dismissively. Tool use. They compensate for biological inadequacy with technology. This is a ranking of apex species based on inherent biological superiority, not technological achievement. If we counted tools, we'd have to include species that use rocks, and then where would we be? This got a laugh from several corners of the auditorium. The Vaughan collective rippled with what might have been amusement. Besides, added a thermic ravager from the third row, their voice like gravel in a blender. Humans are soft. I've seen their anatomy scans. They're basically just water held together by wishful thinking and coffee. More laughter. Thornwick watched Reeves very carefully remove her datapad from her jacket pocket and begin scrolling through files with the calm, methodical precision of someone planning something spectacular. Diana, still observing Marcus, just taking notes. Those are weapons deployment statistics. Comparative biology notes. Same thing, really. A glacian apex in the front row turned their crystalline head toward their neighbor. I heard humans have to eat multiple times a day or they get irritable and irrational. Can you imagine? What kind of apex predator needs constant feeding? The kind that went extinct before developing spaceflight, apparently. Someone else chimed in. The jokes were getting bolder now, encouraged by the lack of human objection. Thornwick was genuinely impressed by the galaxy's ability to collectively forget that humans had a documented history of holding grudges that lasted centuries and a foreign policy that could charitably be described as chaotic, neutral, on a good day. Reeves raised her hand. Oh no, Thornwick muttered. Commander Vex? I have a few clarifying questions, if you don't mind, just for my own understanding of the methodology. Her smile was the most terrifying thing Thornwick had seen in years, and he once watched a Cruthane eat a whole shuttle's worth of protein bars without reading the labels first. This was going to be a disaster. He couldn't wait. Commander Vex's mandibles clicked in what Thornwick recognized as barely tolerant patience. Of course, Captain. We welcome all scientific inquiry. Reeve stood, her posture relaxed, her tone conversational. Thank you, Commander. I just want to make sure I understand the criteria correctly. So, the Crethians earned the top spot primarily due to dominating their homeworld for 60 million years, correct? Among other factors? Yes. And that's one planet with, if I'm reading this correctly, three main biome types: tropical, subtropical, and temperate. Vex's plates shifted slightly. Our world is diverse and challenging. Oh, absolutely. Very impressive. Reeves nodded seriously. Humans have only been spacefaring for about 400 years, so we're definitely behind on the timeline. Though we do have permanent settlements on ice worlds where the average temperature is minus 200 degrees, desert planets where it doesn't rain for decades, ocean worlds where we live 3 kilometers underwater, and one particularly unfortunate colony on a tidally locked planet where half the surface is molten and the other half is frozen solid. We call it Perth 2. The original Perth was in Australia, which is a place on Earth where everything was actively trying to kill us, so we figured we'd honor that tradition. A few eye stalks in the audience swiveled toward Reeves with renewed interest. But that's just tool use, obviously, Reeves continued, her tone remaining perfectly pleasant. Now, the Vaughn Collective, you folks can survive plasma fire, is that right? The Vaughn rippled in their seat. Correct. Plasma does not harm us. That's really neat. We invented plasma weapons about 2 centuries ago. Well, we invented most fire based weapons, really, and projectile weapons, and electromagnetic weapons, and kinetic bombardment, and several types of weapons we immediately banned ourselves from using because even we thought they were excessive. Which should tell you something. She paused, scrolling through her datapad. Though I suppose inventing the thing that kills you doesn't count for epic status. That's more of a design flaw on our part. Thornwick bit his lip hard enough to taste copper. Several species had stopped making their various ambient noises. Reeves moved down her list with the methodical efficiency of someone who had done this calculation well before entering the room. The thermic ravagers, you survive in stars. That's genuinely incredible. We just blow up stars from a safe distance if we need to, but your way seems more intimate, personal, even. We are one with thermal extremes, the Ravager spokesman said, though his gravel voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. Beautiful, really. Now, the razor wings, you have neurotoxin in every part of your body. Quick question, do you folks have any natural predators left on your homeworld? The razor wing representative, a creature that looked like someone's nightmare of a bird crossed with a scorpion, clicked his beak. We eliminated all apex predators 3 million years ago. Right, right. See, humans still have apex predators on Earth. Bears, big cats, sharks, crocodiles. We keep them around because, well, we felt bad about almost hunting them to extinction. And also, they're great for tourism. People pay money to go swimming with sharks on purpose, for fun. She looked up from her datapad. There's actually a subset of humans who specifically seek out dangerous animals to wrestle. We have television shows about it, very popular. The auditorium had gone very quiet. Oh, and Commander Vex, one more thing about that 60 million year timeline. Humans went to our moon before we had proper computers. We did it with slide rules, and I'm not joking here, thousands of people doing math by hand. We went to the moon because it was there, and someone said we probably couldn't. Then we got bored and left flags and a car just to mark our territory. We're basically the galaxy's most overachieving problem children. Pip's eye stalks were fully extended now, swiveling between Reeves and the increasingly uncomfortable looking conference organizers. Reeves smiled warmly at the room. But you're absolutely right that humans lack natural weapons. We're slow, fragile, and we need to eat constantly. No argument there. She sat back down, casually crossing her legs. I just wanted to clarify the methodology. Carry on. Commander Vex's mandibles worked silently for several long seconds. The Vaughn Collective had stopped rippling entirely, which Thornwick had never seen before and suspected wasn't a good sign. Finally, a Glacian apex in the front row spoke up, their voice crystalline and uncertain. Captain Reeves, are you suggesting the rankings are incomplete? Oh no, Reeves said cheerfully. I'm sure they are very thorough. I'm just saying that tool use is a biological adaptation too. We didn't develop opposable thumbs and complex problem solving because we were strong. We developed them because we were weak, and spite is one hell of an evolutionary pressure. Thornwick was no longer even trying to hide his grin. Commander Vex's chitin plates were now shifting in rapid, agitated patterns that Thornwick recognized as the Crithian equivalent of someone realizing they'd made a terrible mistake but refusing to admit it publicly. Captain Reeves, I must object. This ranking is based on biological factors, not technological achievement. Tool use is specifically excluded from the criteria because otherwise we would need to account for every species that has ever picked up a rock or a stick. The methodology is sound. Oh, I completely agree, Reeves said, her tone so reasonable it was almost aggressive. Tools shouldn't count. So let's talk about pure biology for a moment, shall we? She stood again, and Thornwick noticed she had the posture of someone about to give a lecture. He'd seen that stance before, usually right before someone's entire thesis got diplomatically demolished during peer review. Humans are persistently hunting predators, Reeves began, as if she were discussing the weather. Do you know what that means, Commander? Vex's mandibles clicked uncertainly. I am not familiar with the classification. It means we evolved to chase prey until it literally collapsed from exhaustion. We're not fast, you're right about that. A human in peak condition can run at maybe 45 kilometers per hour for a very short burst, but we can jog at 15 kilometers per hour for 6 to 8 hours straight in heat across any terrain. While trekking, our ancestors would pick an antelope and they would just follow it for hours, for days sometimes. The antelope would run, stop to rest, and there would be the human again, still coming, always coming. Eventually, the antelope's body would give out from stress and overheating. We'd walk up and kill it with a rock. She let that sink in for a moment. Most predators in the galaxy are ambush hunters or pack hunters with short chase distances. You jump out, you make the kill quickly, or you give up and try again later. Humans, we don't give up. We just keep coming. It's called persistence hunting. And it's horrifying if you're the prey. Pip's eye stalks had curled into tight spirals. Several other species had gone very still. Now, you mentioned our fragile biology, Reeves continued, warming to her topic. Let's talk about human healing factors. We can recover from broken bones. We can survive blood loss that would kill most species. We have a documented case of a human surviving a metal rod that went completely through his skull. His name was Phineas Gage. He lived another 12 years, and his personality got weird, but he was otherwise functional. We've had humans survive in vacuum for brief periods. We've had humans fall from aircraft and live. We've had humans get struck by lightning multiple times and just develop a fun party story. Commander Vex tried to interrupt. Outlier cases cannot. I'm not finished, Commander. Reeves' voice didn't rise, but something in it made Vex's mandibles snap shut. Human pain tolerance is legendary. We have people who run ultramarathons, which are races longer than a marathon, which is already 42 kilometers of voluntary suffering. We have people who climb mountains that kill you if you stay at the summit too long because there's not enough oxygen. We do this for recreation. We have a medical condition called walking pneumonia, where humans have a lung infection severe enough that most species would be hospitalized, and we just go to work anyway because we have deadlines. She was pacing now, and Thornwick realized she'd probably been waiting for an opportunity like this for years. You want to talk about environmental adaptation? Humans live everywhere on Earth: deserts, tundra, jungles, mountains, coastlines, islands. We're in every ecological niche. We're not specialized for any of them, which means we can handle all of them. That's not a weakness, Commander. That's being a generalist, apex predator. We don't have one perfect environment, we have all of them. The thermic ravager who'd made the joke earlier about humans being made of water had somehow managed to sink lower in his seat despite not having a traditional skeletal structure. And let's address the constant feeding joke, shall we? Reeves glanced at the Glacian apex who'd made the comment. Yes, humans eat multiple times a day under normal conditions, but we can also fast for weeks if we need to. Our bodies store energy, burn fat, break down muscle if necessary. We have documented cases of humans surviving more than 60 days without food. We get unpleasant, yes. Irritable, absolutely. But we survive. And when we're running on empty, when we're exhausted and starving and injured, you know what humans do? She paused, looking around the room. We keep going anyway, out of pure spite. We have a saying, I'm too stubborn to die. That's not a joke, that's a survival strategy. Humans have survived because when everything else says stop, our biology says, but what if we didn't? We run on adrenaline, caffeine, spite, and the sheer refusal to let the universe tell us no. Reeves pulled up a holographic display from her datapad, projecting it for the room to see. Here's a fun timeline. Humans went from nomadic hunter gatherers to landing on our moon in roughly 10,000 years. That's not even a blink in evolutionary time. We did that with the same biology we had when we were chasing antelopes with pointy sticks. Same brain, same body, same species. We just decided that walking everywhere was boring. So we invented everything from the wheel to faster than light travel. She advanced the display. We nearly made ourselves extinct at least 3 times that we know of. Ice Age survived it. Supervolcano eruption that caused a global winter survived it. Multiple self inflicted nuclear near misses survived those too. We're like the galaxy's cockroaches, except we're also the galaxy's apex predator, and we have anxiety and existential dread about it. The Vaughan Collective finally rippled, but this time it looked less like amusement and more like a wave of discomfort passing through thousands of connected organisms. So here's what I'm hearing. Reeves said, her voice taking on a tone of mock confusion. The rankings exclude humans because we use tools to compensate for biological weakness. But our actual biology includes pursuit, predation, extreme environmental adaptability, ridiculous healing factors, the ability to function on minimal resources, and enough stubbornness to make the universe itself uncomfortable. We're not apex predators in spite of our biology. We're apex predators because of it. We're just really bad at staying in our lane. She sat back down, folded her hands in her lap, and smiled pleasantly at Commander Vex. The silence in the auditorium was deafening. Pip's eye stalks slowly rotated toward the conference organizers. When the Quintari spoke, his voice was very small. Commander Vex, I think maybe the rankings need revision. Commander Vex's chitin plates had stopped shifting entirely, locked in what Thornwick recognized as the Crethian freeze response, the evolutionary holdover from when their ancestors played dead to avoid larger predators. The irony was not lost on him. I believe, Vex said slowly, his translator struggling to convey what was probably deep existential discomfort in Crethian, that we should perhaps adjourn for recalculation of the methodology. There may have been some oversights in our initial assessment. Oversights, repeated the Warren Collective spokesman, their unified voice somehow managing to sound individually annoyed. We spent 15 years on this research. Yes, well, Vex's mandibles clicked rapidly. Science is an iterative process. New data requires new conclusions. We will reconvene after a thorough review. The holographic display flickered and died. Species began filing out of the auditorium in a much more subdued manner than they'd entered, the earlier self congratulatory atmosphere replaced by what Thornwick could only describe as collective awkwardness. Several aliens were pointedly not making eye contact with the two humans still sitting calmly in the back row. As the crowd thinned, Thornwick turned to Reeves with an expression of profound admiration mixed with exasperation. You know, Diana, you could have just let them have their moment. They were happy. It was a nice ceremony. Why did you have to ruin it? Reeves shrugged, slipping her data pad back into her jacket. They started it. You don't get to spend 45 minutes explaining why humans are biologically inadequate and then expect us to just nod politely. We're persistent predators, Marcus. We have a cultural memory that spans millennia and a documented pattern of responding to, you can't do that with, watch me. This was inevitable the moment they published those rankings. You rehearsed that speech, didn't you? I've had it ready for 3 years. Ever since I heard they were doing this study, I was really hoping they'd be dumb enough to exclude us. She grinned. They did not disappoint. Thornwick stood, stretching muscles that had gone stiff from sitting through the 2 hour ceremony. You realize you just made every species in this conference deeply uncomfortable about humanity's place in the galaxy. Good. Comfortable people don't respect you. Uncomfortable people remember you exist. Reeves started walking toward the exit, and Thornwick fell into step beside her. Besides, we've been playing the harmless tool users card for too long. Eventually, someone was going to notice that humanity went from one planet to a galactic power in 4 centuries and start asking uncomfortable questions. Better to control that narrative. They walked through the station's main corridor, passing clusters of aliens who stopped their conversations as the two humans approached and resumed them in hushed tones after they passed. Thornwick caught fragments of translated speech. Words like persistence, predator, and pursuit hunting, and they just keep coming, filtered through the translator buds in his ear. You've dramatized them, Thornwick observed. I've educated them, Reeves corrected. There's a difference. They were almost to the docking ring when Pip came scurrying up behind them, eye stalks bobbing with the effort of moving quickly. Captain Reeves, Professor Thornwick, wait please. They stopped. Pip skidded to a halt, breathing heavily, moisture glistening on his pale blue skin. I just wanted to say that was the most fascinating presentation on human biology I have ever witnessed. I had no idea humans were persistent predators. That explains so much about your cultural patterns and your approach to problem solving and your entire military strategy. And he stopped, eye stalks curling with embarrassment. Sorry, I'm rambling. I do that when I'm excited. It's fine, Pip, Thornwick said warmly. He'd always liked the Quintari. They asked good questions. I was wondering, Pip continued, eye stalks extending hopefully, would humans be willing to submit a formal paper on your apex predator qualifications for the revised rankings? I think the scientific community would benefit greatly from a comprehensive analysis, and it would be wonderful to have human input on. No, Reeves said simply. Pip's eye stalks drooped. Oh, I understand if you're too busy or if there are security concerns about sharing biological data. It's not that, Reeves said, and her smile had returned, that same dangerous smile from the auditorium. We're not submitting a paper because we prefer being underestimated. It makes first contact way more interesting. Pip's eye stalks froze in confusion. But you just spent 20 minutes explaining why humans should be ranked as apex predators? I did that because they insulted us first, Reeves explained patiently. But going forward, let them think we're soft and fragile and dependent on tools. Let them think we're not a threat. Humanity has survived and thrived for thousands of years by being underestimated. Why would we change that strategy now? Because it's scientifically inaccurate? Pip, Thornwick said gently, humanity has spent its entire existence turning scientifically inaccurate into a competitive advantage. We flew before we understood aerodynamics. We went to space before we understood radiation. We're not going to start worrying about accurate classification now. Reeves nodded toward the docking ring. Besides, think about it from a practical perspective. Right now, every species at that conference is re evaluating their assumptions about humanity. That's good. That's useful. But if we formally submit to be ranked as the apex species, we become a target. Every young warrior from every predator species in the galaxy will want to prove themselves by challenging us. This way, we're Schrodinger's apex predator, simultaneously dangerous and harmless until someone's dumb enough to check. That's Pip's eye stalks swiveled in a pattern Thornwick had learned meant the Quentary was processing something uncomfortable. That's actually terrifying. Welcome to xenobiology, Thornwick said cheerfully. It's terrifying all the way down. As they turned to leave, Thornwick glanced back at the auditorium entrance. Through the open doors, he could see the holographic display had flickered back to life. Someone was already updating the rankings. The number one spot still read Crethians, but positions 2 through 10 had been crossed out in bright red digital ink with a note that read under review. Diana, Thornwick said slowly, did you hack their display system? Reeves pulled a red stylus pen from her pocket, clicked it once, and slipped it back into her jacket. I have no idea what you're talking about, Marcus. I'm a decorated military officer. I would never compromise an academic institution's data systems just to make a petty point. That's not a stylus pen. That's a wireless interface device. Is it? Huh, must have picked it up by accident. She paused at the airlock to their shuttle. You know what the best part is? Tomorrow, every species at that conference is going to access the human data files they've been ignoring for decades. They're going to read about persistence, hunting, and endurance running, and our ridiculous healing factors. They're going to find out about the Australian outback and the Inuit Arctic settlements and free climbing and ultramarathons and everything else we do for fun that would kill most species. And they're going to realize that Captain Diana Reeves didn't exaggerate a single thing. And that's good for humanity. How? Reeves entered the access code for their shuttle. Because by the time they finish reading, they'll be too afraid to actually check if we want to be ranked as apex predators. Fear of the unknown. Marcus. It's a hell of a defense mechanism. We didn't invent it, we just perfected it. The airlock cycled open. Thornwick followed Reeves into the shuttle, shaking his head. You're enjoying this way too much. I'm a human, Marcus. We're biologically programmed to enjoy being underestimated and then proving people wrong. It's literally in our DNA. She settled into the pilot's seat and began the launch sequence. Now let's get out of here before someone asks us to chair the revision committee. As their shuttle pulled away from station Kepler 7, Thornwick looked back at the massive structure floating in space. Through the windows, he could see aliens moving between sections, probably already accessing those human data files Reeves had mentioned. By tomorrow, the galaxy's understanding of humanity would shift. Not because humans had demanded recognition, but because they'd been insulted and responded with the most devastating weapon in their arsenal. Facts. You know, Thornwick said, as they jumped to FTL, I really do love this job sometimes. That's the persistence predator instinct talking, Reeves replied. We love the chase, even when the chase is academic, especially when the chase is academic. Behind them, on station Kepler 7, Pip was already drafting a new research proposal. It was titled Apex Predators and the Psychology of Intentional Underestimation, a study of human strategic biology. It would go on to win three major scientific awards and become required reading at every xenobiology program in the galaxy. But that's a different story.